There are certain laws of the universe that we rely on. They are the invisible contracts we sign the moment we take our first breath. Gravity pulls things down. Friction keeps things in place. Solid objects remain solid until acted upon by a violent force. We walk through our lives suspended in this safety net of physics. We trust that the floor will hold our weight. We trust that the sky will stay above us. We trust that when we set a glass of water on a table, it will stay there. This trust is what keeps us sane. It is the foundation of human consciousness. If we had to constantly calculate the probability of the ground dissolving or objects spontaneously flying into the sky, we would be paralyzed by terror. We ignore the chaos of the quantum realm, the vibrating atoms, the empty space between electrons, and we focus on the macro, the stable, the predictable, but reality is thinner than we think. It is a membrane stretched tight over a chaotic void, and sometimes, usually when we are least expecting it, that membrane tears. When a glass breaks in a coffee shop, it is usually a clumsy human accident. An elbow bumps a table, a barista slips on a wet floor. Gravity does its work, taking the object from a high potential energy state to a low one. It falls, it hits, it breaks. We understand this. It startles us for a second, a sharp crack that cuts through the ambient chatter. We look over, we see the mess, and we go back to our lattes. It is a known quantity. It fits the contract. But what happens when the laws of physics seem to stutter? What happens when the contract is voided? What happens when an object doesn't fall down but falls up? In the digital archives of the University of Southern California, buried amongst legends of campus ghosts, strange lights in the Doheny Library, and urban myths about the tunnels beneath the school, there is a report from a witness known only as AM. It is a modern account, dated to the last few years. It didn't happen in a Gothic Victorian mansion. It didn't happen in a foggy graveyard at midnight. It happened in the most mundane, sterilized, well-lit environment on the planet, a Starbucks. This is the story of the levitating glass. And to understand it, we cannot just look at the ghost. We have to look at the glass itself. We have to look at the violent physics of tension trapped in silica. We have to look at the land history of South Los Angeles. And most importantly, we have to look at the students sitting at that table and the immense, invisible pressure that might have forced reality to crack. To understand the haunting, you must first understand the stage. The University of Southern California, USC, a prestigious institution in the heart of Los Angeles. It is a city within a city, a place of high achievement, high tuition, and even higher stress. For the thousands of students who live and study here, life is a constant, grinding series of deadlines. It is a state of high-functioning anxiety. It is the kind of stress that doesn't scream, it hums, it vibrates in the teeth. It sits in the stomach like a stone. In 2017, the university opened the USC Village. It was a massive $1.25 billion expansion designed to house thousands of students. If you walk through it today, it feels uncanny. The architecture is described as collegiate Gothic revival. It looks ancient, with its soaring spires, intricate clock towers, and red brick facades, but it is brand new. It is a simulation of history, a place that feels like Hogwarts but smells like fresh concrete and money. There is a psychological concept known as the uncanny valley, usually applied to robotics, when something looks almost human but not quite, creating a feeling of revulsion. The USC Village sits in the uncanny valley of architecture. It is too perfect. The bricks are too clean. The grass is too green. It feels like a movie set where the director hasn't yelled, "Cut," yet. And beneath this pristine simulation lies a history of displacement. Before the Spires and the Trader Joe's, this land was the University Village, a 1960s shopping center that served the local working-class community. And before that, it was neighborhoods, layers of history, layers of lives scraped away to make room for the new. Paranormal researchers often talk about liminal spaces, places of transition, thresholds between one state and another. A brand new building sitting on top of displaced history is the ultimate liminal space. It is a place that hasn't settled yet, a place where the spiritual foundation is still shifting. At the heart of this village is the Starbucks. This isn't your corner drive-through. This is a cathedral of caffeine. It is beautifully designed, industrial chic, dark wood paneling, warm amber lighting. It is designed to be a third place, a sanctuary between home and school. But if you walk in there during midterms, it doesn't feel like a sanctuary. If you listen closely to the room tone, beneath the hiss of the espresso machine and the indie folk playlist, you can hear the tension. It is a low-frequency thrum. Every table is occupied by a student writing a thesis, coding an app, or cramming for a final that will determine their entire future. The air is thick with cortisol. You can smell the desperation mixed with the roasted Arabica. Paranormal researchers have a theory called the stone tape theory, proposed in the 1970s. It suggests that intense emotional events, fear, trauma, or even extreme prolonged stress can be recorded into the environment. The theory posits that stone walls, water, and even the very atmosphere can absorb the bioelectric energy of the people within it. Like a magnetic tape recording a voice, a room can record a feeling. If this theory holds any water, then a university Starbucks during finals week isn't just a coffee shop. It is a battery, a capacitor charged to the bursting point with nervous energy. Thousands of hours of panic, fear, and exhaustion are soaked into the drywall, into the floorboards, into the furniture. And on this specific day, documented in the folklore archives, that battery discharged. Before we dissect the incident, we need to look at the source. The story comes from the USC Digital Folklore Archives. This is a fascinating academic project where students record the legends, myths, and strange experiences of their peers. It is a library of the irrational. Scanning through the archives, you find a pattern. USC is a place that is haunted by its own ambition. There are stories of the Doheny Library ghost, said to be the spirit of a founder who died under mysterious circumstances, wandering the stacks of the rare book collection. There are tales of the Lady in Flats, a solid-looking apparition seen in nearby housing. These stories serve a purpose. They are what sociologists call ostension, the acting out of legends to explain the unexplainable pressures of life. But the story of the levitating glass stands out because it lacks the usual tropes. There is no Victorian ghost. There is no spooky backstory. There is just a glass, a table, and a witness named A.M. A.M. was sitting with a friend. It was a normal day. The sun was streaming through the large windows of the village Starbucks. They were talking, not about ghosts, not about the occult. They were likely discussing classes or relationships or the crushing weight of their schedule. On the table between them sat a glass. Now, most Starbucks serve drinks in plastic or paper cups, disposable, temporary, but for stay-here orders or for water, they often use glass, simple, heavy, industrial-grade glass. It is thick-bottomed, designed to survive the dishwasher and the clumsy hands of undergraduates. It sat on the table, sweating. Condensation ran down the sides, pooling at the base. A small ring of water formed between the glass and the varnished wood. Physics tells us what should happen next. Scenario A, someone hits the table, the glass wobbles, the water sloshes. Scenario B. The condensation creates a hydroplaning effect known as the coaster effect. The layer of water reduces friction, and the glass slides slowly, almost imperceptibly, across the surface. Scenario C, there is an earthquake. This is California, after all. The ground moves and the glass moves with it. None of those things happened. According to the testimony, the glass did not tip, it did not slide, it did not shake, it lifted. It just floated a little bit into the air, AM recounted in the archives. Let's slow this moment down. Let's look at it frame by frame. The conversation is flowing. The background noise is a steady hum. The glass is stationary. Then silence. Many witnesses to paranormal phenomena report the Oz factor, a sensation where the ambient sound of the world suddenly drops away. The birds stop singing. The traffic noise fades. You are enveloped in a bubble of absolute silence. Inside this bubble, the laws of gravity are suspended. The bond between the glass and the table is broken. To lift a standard 16-ounce glass of water requires force. You have to overcome gravity. You need lift. There was no hand. There was no magnet. There was no string. For one impossible, heart-stopping second, the glass existed in a state of anti-gravity. It rose, vertical, smooth, deliberate. It hovered about 3 inches in the air. This is the detail that transforms the story from a physics curiosity to a horror story. If a glass explodes, it's scary. If a glass flies, it's predatory. The movement implies intent. It implies that something picked it up. Imagine sitting there. You are looking at your friend. In your peripheral vision, you see movement. You turn your head, you see a heavy object floating in empty space. Your brain tries to reject it. It tries to find the wires. It tries to find the trick. But there is no trick. There is just the raw, naked violation of reality. And then it detonated. It didn't fall and break. It shattered from the air. It exploded into hundreds of pieces, raining down onto the floor and the table. SFX, a sharp, violent crack. Before we call the exorcist, we must call the physicist. We have to ask, is there a natural explanation for a glass exploding? Absolutely. And the science of it is almost as terrifying as the supernatural explanation. It is a phenomenon known as spontaneous glass breakage, and it is surprisingly common in the food service industry. Starbucks, like many restaurants, uses toughened or tempered glass. This isn't the glass in your grandmother's windows. This is armor. It is heat-treated to be incredibly strong. It is designed to withstand thermal shock. Hot coffee 1 minute, cold rinse water the next. To make it, the glass is heated to over 600 degrees Celsius, the temperature of magma. Then it is blasted with cold air. This causes the outside of the glass to cool and contract rapidly, forming a hard shell, but the inside remains hot and liquid for a few seconds longer. As the center finally cools, it pulls on the outer shell. It wants to shrink, but the outer shell is already frozen in place. This creates a state of immense internal tension. The glass is essentially a solid, transparent spring, wound up tight, waiting to snap. This tension is what makes it durable. If you drop it, it bounces. But it also makes it a ticking time bomb. Enter the villain of the glass industry. Nickel sulfide. Sometimes, during the manufacturing process, microscopic contaminants of nickel, from the machinery, and sulfur, from the fuel, get trapped in the melt. They form tiny stones or inclusions. They are invisible to the naked eye. Over time, sometimes months, sometimes years later, these tiny stones can expand. They undergo a phase change, and because the tempered glass is under such high tension, that tiny microscopic expansion disrupts the delicate balance. The web of tension snaps. Pop. The stored energy is released instantly. The glass doesn't just crack, it disintegrates. It shatters into thousands of small, relatively harmless cubes, safety glass. It looks exactly like an explosion. It can happen when a glass is sitting on a shelf. It can happen in a dishwasher. It can happen on a table. So, case closed. It was a nickel sulfide inclusion, a manufacturing defect that just happened to trigger while AM was drinking her coffee. It's a comforting thought. It's scientific. It's rational. It allows us to sleep at night. but there is one massive, glaring problem with this theory. The one detail that AM was adamant about, spontaneous breakage, explains the shatter. It does not explain the lift. When a nickel sulfide stone triggers a break, the energy is released outward. The glass crumbles, gravity takes over, and the pieces fall down. The glass does not jump 3 inches into the air before detonating. There is no known chemical reaction in glass manufacturing that generates vertical thrust. There is no physics equation that allows an object to levitate itself prior to self-destruction. A defect can make a glass break. It cannot make a glass fly. If physics hits a dead end, we have to turn down a darker path. We have to look at the history of noisy spirits, the poltergeist. The word comes from the German poltern, to knock or rumble, and Geist, ghost spirit. For centuries, folklore has documented cases of objects moving on their own. Stones thrown at houses, a phenomenon known as lithobolia, crockery flying off shelves, furniture sliding across rooms. In the 1960s and 70s, parapsychology shifted its view on these events. Researchers like William G. Roll, who investigated the famous Seaford poltergeist, began to theorize that poltergeists weren't ghosts of dead people at all. They viewed them as something else, something human. They called it RSPK, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. The theory suggests that poltergeist activity is actually a psychic projection from a living person, usually called the agent. In classic cases, the agent was often an adolescent. A teenager going through puberty, dealing with the hormonal storms of youth, repressed anger, or trauma. The theory is that the human mind, when put under extreme pressure, can act like a pressure cooker. If the steam can't escape through words or emotions, it escapes through physics. It leaks out. It interacts with the environment. It knocks on walls. It breaks lights. It throws glasses. Now bring that theory back to USC. Look at the demographic: young adults, late teens, early 20s, away from home for the first time, under immense pressure to perform, sleep-deprived, fueled by stimulants, emotionally repressed. Recent studies into this phenomenon have coined a new term, haunted people syndrome, HPS. It suggests that people with thin boundaries, people who are highly sensitive, highly imaginative, or highly stressed, are more likely to experience these anomalies. They are transliminal. Their internal chaos bleeds into the external world. If RSPK is real, if the human mind can project stress as physical energy, then a university Starbucks is a reactor core. It is a room full of potential agents. Was AM the agent? Was her friend? Or was it the student at the next table, the one staring blankly at a blank screen, silently screaming about a failing grade? The levitating glass fits the classic RSPK profile perfectly. Stage 1, the accumulation of energy, the battery charging up. Stage 2, the manipulation of an object, the levitation. Stage 3, the destructive release, the shattering. It wasn't a ghost haunting the coffee beans. It was the raw, unfiltered anxiety of the student body, finding a way to vent. The glass didn't break because it was defective. It broke because the air in that room was so heavy with stress that reality couldn't hold it anymore. There is a detail often left out of these stories: the reflection. Glass is a mirror. When that glass lifted, what did AM see in it? Did she see her own terrified face, or did she see something else? There are urban legends in Lowe's Angels about the Watchers, shadow people, figures seen in the corner of the eye in high-stress environments, hospitals, prisons. Universities. Some occultists believe that these entities feed on the energy we release. They are drawn to the battery. If the stone tape theory explains the recording, perhaps the poltergeist theory explains the playback. But maybe, just maybe, there is an intelligence involved. Why a glass? Why that specific table? It feels performative. It feels like a tantrum. If there was an entity in that Starbucks, drawn by the psychic beacon of 1,000 stressed-out students, maybe it just wanted to be seen. It picked up the glass to say, "Look at me, I am here, your stress is feeding me," and then it crushed it just to show what it could do. The glass exploded, silence descended. The testimony in the archives is very specific about this moment. Everyone just kind of froze. AM looked at her friend. The friend looked at AM. The customers at the neighboring tables looked at them. The shared look of, did that really just happen? This is the most terrifying part of the story. Not the explosion, but the seconds after, because we know what happened next. Did the police come? No. Did the Ghostbusters show up with proton packs? No. Did the university shut down the Starbucks to investigate a breach in the laws of thermodynamics? No, a barista likely sighed. They came out from behind the counter with a broom and a dustpan. They swept up the shards. They probably asked, "Are you okay?" They probably offered a free refill. And AM and her friend, shaking, probably said thank you. The witnesses went back to their laptops. The typing resumed. The music swelled back up. That is the true horror of modern hauntings, the banality of it. The anomaly happens. The impossible occurs right in front of our faces, and we sweep it up and throw it in the trash. We sanitize it. We force it back into the box of normalcy because the alternative is too terrifying to contemplate. There was no investigation. There were no EMF meters, just a pile of broken glass in a landfill somewhere in Southern California. The physical evidence is gone. The table has been wiped clean with sanitizer. The memory has been scrubbed, but the story remains in the archives, a digital ghost. We tell ourselves that the world is solid. We tell ourselves that if we work hard, if we study, if we get the degree, we will be safe. We build our lives on these contracts, but the story of the levitating glass is a crack in the foundation. It suggests that our internal world, our fears, our anxieties, our hidden rages, is powerful enough to break the external world. It suggests that we are not just observers of reality, but active participants in it. And if we push too hard, reality pushes back. We may never know what truly happened that day in the USC village. Was it a 1 in a billion physics anomaly, a perfect storm of thermal shock and optical illusion? Or was it a moment where the collective stress of a university campus became so heavy, so dense, that it temporarily rewrote the laws of gravity? The next time you are in a coffee shop, take a look at the glass on your table. Watch the condensation running down the side. Watch the way the light hits it. Listen to the hum of the